She said he does not have light hair. You know, great, but so then I want to have to see that. Is there a winner?
All right, about 2 more minutes to play your game.
Play again. Okay, male eyes, dark hair.
Yeah.
That is white. Yes.
German. Maybe he's a Viking.
Yeah.
Could be a Viking with his haircut. I think he looks like a Viking.
It works. Yes.
What is the gift?
Oh yeah. So what that is?
Okay, who's Bella's dad? This guy.
Friends. What?
Buddy is like
All right, 30 seconds.
Yes, you win.
I was wrong.
Oh, you were
I was thinking that.
The black guy.
I asked yes if mine was pale. I didn't ask.
You said yes.
Because Brett is pale.
All right. All right, turn your attention back up here. Yeah, I have a question for you. Now that you have played the game, I have a question for you. What process were you using to determine the identity of the person? Elimination. How did you eliminate?
By categories.
Say more. What's that?
Asking appearance-based question.
Race.
Asking appearance-based question. Okay.
Categories based on
Okay, so categories.
Yeah.
I should have been.
Yes. What else? Think those of you who had biology. How do you classify a creature?
By color? DNA.
Characteristics. Phyla.
Kingdom, phyla, class, order, family, genus.
There you go. Kingdom or those are categories. Right? Those are categories. Kingdom, order, class, phyla, genus. Right? You're using categories. Were all the faces on your paper human? Not meant to be a trick question, but okay. He is a little. He's a creepy person, but yeah. So as you were debating that just now, you were using categories you're probably not even aware of to determine how you wanted to answer the question. One of the categories you're using is what I'm about to say funny. Okay. You were using categories. Were they all human? If I put a dog face on there, you would have instantly known that one of these things was not like the other. Okay. Yeah, you're using categories. The categories you're using, though, come from a model. You know what a human being is So you're subconsciously comparing all the faces you just looked at to what you think makes up a human being. When I asked the question, were all the faces human? Okay? You were using a process of elimination, but the elimination was based on categories. You need to have a model to start with, or you can't get to what you're discerning for. I could show you a dozen different pieces of furniture, and for those of you who remember Plato, I should show you a dozen different pieces of furniture, and all but one could be a chair. You could easily tell me which 11 were chairs and which one wasn't, because you have in your mind a model chair that you're working from or toward, okay? So what we're going to talk about today is what makes a human being. We did this a couple of weeks ago because I wanted to see where you guys were at. Julia, do I remember that you took our picture of the somebody took a picture of the board? I thought you were the one who took our picture.
I think everyone has it, but yeah.
Right.
Oh, I got it.
Okay. So let's go over to that page. Let's go to your next page in your notes. Okay, just your note-taking page. I want to start with laying a couple ideas out for you guys just to think about, particularly about what it means to be a human being, because that's what we're going to look at now. We looked a lot at Jesus in the first half, and we're going to look more at Jesus, don't get me wrong, but today's mostly going to be focused on you. We looked at Jesus, we looked at the resurrection. Whatever else the resurrection means, it means that God was certifying some of the outrageous things Jesus said about himself, like I'm God. Okay? So to look at Jesus now and say that he's God, if he was indeed raised from the dead, that makes perfectly good sense. Now to say that Jesus is a human being may seem a little more intuitive, but now I want to ask you, what is a human being? If we're saying God took on what it means to be a human being, we want to look at what we are. Because here's the strange reality of being a human being. As far as we know, human beings are the only species that can't explain themselves, or even has the attempt to. Every great piece of art that you've ever listened to, looked at, has been some exploration of what it means to be a human being in some way, shape, or form. Okay? Human beings are a mystery to ourselves. But we also are the only species you know of that says, why should I think about that at all? Squirrels don't wander around wondering what it's like to be a squirrel. They just do it. Okay? They don't spend time thinking about being a squirrel. I wonder if I'm being a good squirrel today. No, they're busy, collecting nuts or running from foxes or whatever they're doing. Okay? Human beings reflect upon this. So you'll see a little thing with some blanks to fill in as you start. Humanity is the only species that's both a mystery to itself and is capable of pondering that mystery. You guys are a million miles from this. But one of the things we study in psychology, most of your 40s and 50s are spent asking yourself the question, why did I do what I did for the first 40 years of my life? What was prompting me? I made a lot of stupid decisions when I was 25 and 35. Why did I do that? Psychologists have a job because we are a mystery to ourselves, and their job is to help us figure out a little bit of that mystery. Now, here's something that's not on your sheet, but it's a great throwaway line from one of my great preaching professors. You guys are probably too young to know who Jesse Jackson was. Yes? You don't remember who Jesse Jackson was? Okay. Jesse Jackson was a very famous pastor / political rights leader / politician. I think he ran for president a couple times. One of my professors in seminary, I took a class at Howard University, which is mostly an African-American school or black school. Really enjoyed having this professor there. His claim to fame is he had taught Jesse Jackson how to preach. He'd been Jesse Jackson's professor. And he was a great teacher, but he was in his 80s when I had him. And so we would sit there for a 3-hour seminar, and he would tell stories. That was his preaching style anyway. He would tell stories. You just sit with your pen poised. And then for that 5 seconds of that 3 hours when he was really getting to his point. He wrote that down quickly because that was the whole point of the 3 hours. He said one of the best lines I'll never forget in my life. He said, "A mystery is not something, I should say. A mystery is not something about which we can know nothing. A mystery is something about which we cannot know everything." Okay. If you like mysteries, our family are inveterate mystery watchers on television. There's no mystery if there are no clues. The sleuth has nothing to figure out with no clues at all. You have to start with a few things. You have clues about yourself. What you don't have is all the information about yourself. Okay? I'm not going to remember the name of this. This is a diagram that psychologists use. It's called a something window, but I can't remember what the word is. I want you to think about your best friend or a close family member. Okay? They don't know. Just mentally, you can fill this in as you go. Think of somebody you love, somebody who's close to you, somebody you feel like is maybe one of the closest people in your life. There are things about yourself that you know that they don't know, right? There's a few things at least you haven't told them. Even if it's just the dream that you had last night and are really embarrassed about and you hope nobody ever finds out about it. Okay? There's things about you that you know that they don't know. There are things about you that they do know. Now, there's things about you that they know that you don't know about yourself. I didn't know I was really annoying when I did X, Y, and Z, but they know that about me.
I didn't know I had a condescending and smug-sounding voice until yesterday. Completely informed me. Wow. Oh, really?
No, that's brutal, man. That's
And of course, this window over here, there's things about you that they don't know, and there's things about you that you don't know. That's a good question. But this is where the mystery lies. Okay? My mother was an alcoholic. I discovered that some of the patterns in my 40s, I discovered that some of the things I did with my life habitually had everything to do with the fact that my mom was an alcoholic. Very typical. Typical enough that I could read a book and go, oh, wow, here's the checklist, and I do all those things. Not only do I do all those things, but I do all those things because I'm the oldest kid, and it was my job to clean up after her and take care of my kids, take care of my younger brothers when she got sick from drinking too much. I didn't know that about myself. So what happened was somebody who did know something about me that I didn't know. For me, this was shrouded in mystery. Something I didn't know about myself that a doctor who had studied people who are children of alcoholics did. They moved some information that was over here. A data set over here got moved over to here for me. Working out a mystery is all about moving things from the don't know categories into the knowing categories. This one, where they don't know and I don't know, there's one person who knows about everything. What do we call them? God. When we say God is all-knowing, we mean including that category. Okay? But we're going to look a little bit right now. We're going to try and move a few of these things from don't know to know that maybe aren't in this category right now. So there's a couple different categories there on your page. Ways that human beings have sought to understand themselves. This is just a sampling. Okay? And we are by no means going to plumb the depths of humanity today, but we're going to get you guys started in thinking about some of this stuff. All right? What does it mean to be a human being? So the first category I threw on your page there was different ways to define a human being. What do you have down as your first category? Rational, irrational. What do we mean by that?
Like relating to our emotions.
Okay.
How we react.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Irrational or rational? What's rational going to refer to?
Something that we can judge for ourselves with a presence of mind that
Logical. Yeah, logical, reason, judgment, evaluation. What would irrational be? Louder?
illogical.
Is that what you said?
Irrational.
Spontaneous. I couldn't understand the first word. Okay, spontaneous. Yeah. What else? Somebody said illogical. Could be.
Impulsive.
Impulsive. Lingering behind impulsive and spontaneous is what else?
Stupid.
Can be. What's that? De-evolution. Interesting. Sometime I'm going to introduce you to a poem called "Hymn to Evolution."
Unnecessary.
Maybe not. Ever hear the phrase left brain, right brain? What do we look at? What's right brain? Artistic side. Emotion. It's the only side that works. Well, human and people have gone back and forth, and at different periods in history, they've leaned toward one or the other. Now, most people have acknowledged that human beings are both. There are times we behave rationally. There are times we behave irrationally. I've been to college. I've watched someone who is brilliant in philosophy class at 8 a.m. be an irrational drunk at 8 p.m. on the same day. Some combination, some interaction between rational and irrational. There's a really good psychologist out there right now. You guys should know the name of, who's done some phenomenal work in this, Jonathan Haidt. And most people in his particular field of psychology lean towards the rational. We're gonna look at judgment, discussion, evaluation. He says, it's about an 80-20 split. Most people do what they do for irrational reasons, and then they rationalize what they intended to do in the first place. They don't coolly think it through and then say, I'll do that. Typically, they go with their gut and then find a way to say, oh, that was the right choice after all. So that's fine. This is one lens. What prompts our behavior? Intellectual. One of the most interesting things about the rational side, the reason piece, is language use. Human beings are the only species that uses language. Chimpanzees will use gestures. They don't use words. And particularly, words for abstract concepts. All of you are stuck doing some form of math right now. Without the concept of zero, you would not be doing math. Completely abstract concept that you need a word for. One of the things about abstract concepts is you can't hold on to them without a word. One of the interesting things about our faith is what was the reading most of us heard on Christmas Eve? From the beginning of the Gospel of John, probably, or sometime during this Christmas season. In the beginning was the Word. And for our Jewish brothers and sisters, in the beginning, God spoke and said, "Let there be light." In Judaism and Christianity, by extension, especially emphasized in Christianity, the Word is the ordering principle of the universe. All we would have around us is stuff. And we would move from stuff to stuff to stuff with no sense of memory or anything else without language. And on the other side here, on the irrational side, or maybe sub-rational side, any of you ever hear of the subconscious? If you lived 150 or 200 years ago, you wouldn't have. Most of us are well aware when we look at other people that they're being motivated by things that they're not even aware of. We say, "Wow, why would they do something stupid like that? Boy, they're really attention seeking. Wow, they're really insecure." I'm not motivated that way personally. We try to develop a sense that there's more going. We try to develop our own sense of that. Become aware, move from knowing to not knowing about some of the things that are motivating us and pushing us along. Okay? Subconscious, the use of language. There's more layers to both of these than we can possibly get into today. But those give you some ideas of what it means to be human. Now, often in scholarship, we talk about looking with different lenses, okay? Your fancy word for that, if you really want to know what it is, because I'll probably use it and forget you don't know it, is hermeneutic. Okay, we're going to use a... So what's the next word on your list? Morally. You want to pull out that list at this point, Julia, and read some of what was on that?
Which side?
The side, what did you think human beings were?
That side.
We went into God and human, right? If I remember right. What is God? What is human? You guys went in. This was your list. I just asked you what is human. What did you just read off some of the things you came up with?
Sinful, unholy, immoral, free will, weak, corrupted, ungrateful, stubborn, finite, uncoordinated, impatient, judgmental, blinded to truth, unbreakable, unreliable, indomitable, trustful, ruled by passions, oblivious, lying, Homo sapiens, or biological, I guess, annoying, and imperfect.
Okay, so there were a lot of moral words in that list you guys came up with, right? Human beings we're intrinsically moral. Somebody illustrated this for me recently and said, if you don't think all human beings are moral, join the mafia and then steal from the boss and find out what happens to you. There is a lively sense of what is right and wrong inside the mafia. Okay? Even though they're the criminals. Yeah. Human beings are what do you guys, if you guys had to say, what does it mean to be moral? What does it mean? How would you define it?
To follow a strict set of codes that, despite outside circumstances, would fall no matter what.
Yeah. Follow a code, okay. What else?
I know it's not necessarily what moral is, but you have to see morality before you could do it,
Okay.
You have to, that everyone follows, because not everyone's idea of being moral is the same.
Okay, so you need to learn the code in order to do it?
There needs to be a set code that everyone follows.
Okay.
For it to be, for everyone to call it moral.
Okay.
You have to have something to go off of.
So the moral code must be observed around you in some way, shape, or form. Or maybe the word you're looking for is verifiable. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
Yeah.
Okay, you need to be able to verify that code. Do people grow morally? Say more.
sometimes you just get that feeling inside you that you might be at the start of something, you feel like, oh, this is fine, I'm not doing anything to hurt people, like, per se. Then once you think about it, or even something inside your body will just start telling you that, you shouldn't be doing that. It's wrong.
Okay, so growth and learning is a possibility.
Gut feeling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's like that feeling inside that, for example, is just completely wrong with everything.
Yes.
I mean, not everybody has that, but then people have it on different levels. Some people's morals may be a lot higher than others, and some people may just have a sliver of morality.
I think it just depends on if you for it or not.
Well, I think the difference is that maybe it's not necessarily that you grow morally, but you change morally. Because, I mean, I think that everybody has a sense of morals, except for complete sociopaths who don't have the capacity for moral. So, I don't think so much that you grow, you change instead. Like, if you believe that there is a higher morality that all people must aspire to find, like, as in the morality that you're supposed to follow from a different perspective, I'd say yes, you can grow in that. But if you're looking at it from a more worldly perspective, where there is no objective right, then I'd say no, it's not change.
Okay. You used the word sociopath there for a moment. It's interesting. Sociopath literally means someone who can feel no empathy for another person. It's an inability to respond emotionally to someone else, which points to that there's some aspect here of social convention. You instinctively paired sociopathy with immorality, but it's really a relational diagnosis. The person has an inability to relate to other people. So there's an aspect of moral convention that is social, right?
Well, I mean, there's no point being moral if you're all alone. At that point, there's not really much you can do to other people to hurt them, and that's usually when morality pops in.
There you go. Yeah, we run up against the boundaries of morality. So here's an interesting perspective that a colleague gave me a couple of years ago. Many of you may know that the African subcontinent has largely flipped Christian in the last 50 to 60 years. A great number, come on in. A great number of people who were something else before became Christian. What's been interesting, one of the locals who was a Christian said to this pastor who was over there, said, I said, I really blame Christian. He said, I'm a Christian, but I blame Christianity for a lot of the problems we're having right now with gays. I said, because we just used to take them out in the field and kill them. So Christianity came in, which historically would be against same-sex behavior, but also against killing gay people. And that was a rub up against what was in that area had been Islamic area before. So if you go to Iraq today, you'll see public hangings of homosexuals. Okay, so there's a huge. You've got three things. You've got our culture, which is LGBTQ affirming in America. You've got Christianity, which is not affirming, but affirming of the rights of the people, and then you have Islam that's against both. And you've got huge millions of people defending each of these positions. So conversation is part of how the growth, learning, and change happens, right? And that points to a relational dimension, to being moral. Okay? But then back to what you were saying before, Addie, there needs to be something verifiable. There has to be some standard of judgment whereby we say one's better than the other. It's not just my tribe against your tribe, or we're stuck in a free-for-all. So how do you do that?
I think another thing about morals is that the paradigm setting, like it changes the way you view the world.
Yes. On the LGBTQ issues, those of us who are over 40 in this room, at least, were raised in a very different world than the one you guys in that regard. And what everybody knew when we were growing up is the opposite of what everybody knows now, which leads to the question, do we actually know this stuff? Or is it just a preponderance of opinion that masquerades as morality? Okay. Okay, so that was our moral hermeneutic. What's your next one?
Biological.
Biological. How would you define human beings biologically? Not a trick question. This is probably the easiest one on the list.
Bipedal.
Huh?
Bipedal.
Bipedal? Okay, there you go. Using 2 feet. What else? Complex. Hmm. What else?
Genetic order.
Huh?
Genetic materials stored in it.
Okay.
Advanced.
Interesting.
Now that I can learn from other animals from a biological perspective.
Okay. Yeah. You can fill this in pretty easily. Like carbon-based, right? That's a way that we're like every other form of life on this planet, so far as we know. There's theories about silicon-based forms of life, but we've never uncovered one for real. Just because silicon is similar enough chemically to carbon, you might be able to manage that. What else? No one could give me the scientific name for human beings? Homo sapiens, right?
Made of
Yeah, that's fine. Made of atoms, yeah. What else? Omnivorous. At least some of us. Yeah. This is probably the easiest category. We could go right through that list because this is all objectively verifiable stuff we can look at, right? We can all count it, we can look at it, whatever. Interestingly, one of the foremost, probably the foremost Christian apologists in the world just came out with a book looking for historic Adam and Eve. And he actually points Adam and Eve back to before Homo sapiens. He puts it back to Neanderthal, which was Homo heidelbergian, I believe. Herbergensian? Anyway, based on Heidelberg in Germany. Yeah, so what was our order against material studied biology? It's Kingdom, phyla,
class, order, family, genus, species.
Family, genus, species. So this is your genus and your species, right? Because there's a whole lot of other homos out there. There's Homo erectus. There's all the other primordial human type figures that were out there. Okay. All right. So that's biological. Okay. Next. Relational. We tapped on this. This has been a lively point of debate in philosophy, particularly for the last 200 or 300 years, particularly European philosophy. What do you think the debate is? And it's also legal philosophy, by the way. What's the debate? What does it mean to be relational?
That each function based on a relationship.
Mm-hmm. So here's your question. What's more essential to human identity? Autonomy, which means what?
Individuality and self-government.
Mm-hmm. Here's your root words. Auto, self, namus, law. A law unto yourself. That's what autonomous means. Relational. Which is more key? And American law always leans towards autonomy. Okay? Other societies go the other direction. There is a fully consistent materialist will say autonomy is an illusion. None of us are autonomous. We're just programmed by our biology. We're programmed by the atoms that bounce together accidentally to form us. None of us have a self. Your sense of self is a complete illusion.
Which makes no sense because if you have no sense of self, how can you create an illusion of self?
The whole book's written about it. Got to the end of one of those books and says, "Why are you reading this book?" The guy was being utterly consistent. He's like, you know what? I'm not even sure why I wrote this book. I'm not sure why you're reading it. Just an accident, I guess. Okay. We all know we're relational. Without the fundamental interactions, especially of learning to hear other people speak, you will not develop most of the faculties that you think of as being human. There have been unfortunate cases where abused children have been neglected to such a degree that they never develop the basic functions that we think of as they're perfectly fine biologically. They don't have a syndrome or a defunctive brain, but they missed out on the relational portion of what would have made them human. So there's some sort of interaction between these two. Okay.
So are you asking us which one we think is more important?
I'm just asking you to think about it. Believe me, we are not going to settle these questions today. There are whole libraries devoted to each one of these areas. But here's a couple of questions I would ask you. What's our fundamental relationship? The Christian answer is our relationship to God. But God nestles us up in a whole lot of other relationships, some of which are healthy, some of which are unhealthy, some of which are a good mix, like my mom, who was an alcoholic, and that was painful, who was also a very strong person who would fight for the underdog and things like that in a increasingly bad medical system. That was good. She was a mixed bag. Okay? My relationship with her was a mixed bag. But I was nestled into that relationship by God. So I have a relationship with God, I have a relationship with her, a relationship with a lot of people. Right down to the question, in terms of autonomy, is a solo human being truly human? Jean-Paul Sartre was probably the most famous person to really stand on the autonomy thing. And he came to a point where he said, the only reason I don't commit suicide is that it would decrease my freedom. So freedom for him was the ultimate good, being a law unto yourself. But he was so depressed, the only reason he didn't kill himself was it would diminish his freedom. Okay.
That's a dark way of looking at life.
It sure is. Okay. Next one is, we touched on this already through the irrational, but psychological, right? You guys are going to go to take rudimentary classes, just about anything. If you take them, if you go on to any form of college, actually they do this a lot in the military too. Even if you decide not to go to college and go to the military, you'll do psyops. Okay, psychology. You look at other people. You'll learn about a thing called Maslow's hierarchy, which basically says that until a certain need is met, you can't move on to the next need. So at the top of Maslow's hierarchy is self-determination, autonomy, but you never get there until you've got food, clothing, love. You have to work your way up the hierarchy, okay? Then you'll have people like B.F. Skinner who are into behaviorism. He's really the father of behaviorism. Here's a guy who had such a great relationship with the kids, he put them in cages to see if they could get conditioned. You've ever heard? Have you heard of the experiment where they ring the bell and the dog salivates? Because they ring the bell and they feed the dog. They ring the bell and they feed the dog. They ring the bell and they feed the dog, and they put little tubes in the dog. What's you're talking about The Office? Yeah.
Every time the computer pings, he gives Dwight an Altoid.
There you go.
That happens.
Exactly. Yes. So are we just coded and programmed? That's what behaviorists would hold up for. There's a lot of. We're not going to go into all these different things. One that's getting a resurgence right now was out of favor for a good part of thing is Jungian psychology, which you guys will probably be learning lots about through literature. That's mostly where it has nestled itself. But increasingly, it's being applied back over to human beings now. Carl Jung was a very famous protege of Sigmund Freud. That's another type of psychology. You probably.
Gosh, I think we all have at least heard of Freudian psychology.
Yeah. Jungian psychology. You ever heard of archetypes? An archetype would be like the wise old man, the wise old woman, the lover, the warrior. That we all participate in these classic roles in our lives, and that he actually believed in what he called it a cosmic unconsciousness, where we drew on the wisdom of all the other people who had played that role before us in a way. Freud, of course, believed in the id, the ego, and the superego. Is that one word?
Yeah.
Okay, I shouldn't. I'm looking at it going, that looks wrong. Okay, superego. So it are all your instincts and animal desires. Your ego is that little rational part in the middle. The superego is all the programming you get from society of what to do right. Okay? Everything from your mom smacking your hand when you went to reach for the hot burner when you were a little kid. You don't even remember it. You just know not to touch a hot burner now. To the stories you've heard, the tales you tell, the little phrases around your family that are sort of conventional wisdom. All those little voices inform your ego, and then your ego tries to control your id, okay? Or at least channel it. And then, what's your last one? Oh, look, there's a vocabulary word. Metaphysical. Everybody has a metaphysical point of view, right? The most devout materials, what is their metaphysical point of view on human beings? What do they believe spiritually about human beings? The most devout materialists. What do they believe about human beings? Do we have a soul?
Nope.
That's a point of view.
Entirely God, there's nothing within us. We are just empty flesh bags that for some reason think we're God.
Yep. Yeah, most people will talk. Well, not if they don't know the word metaphysical, they'll know spiritual, right? Okay, that's still wet. That's why that's not working. All right. We'll finish right now when it dries. All right. So what are some of the things you can believe about human beings in terms of their metaphysicals? Their metaphysical reality.
Longing, like we're always longing to know more.
Okay. Yep. Is this actually going to write now? There we go. Longing. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Longing, desire. I love one of my favorite words for desire is German. I'm not a German speaker. My wife is. Sehnsucht. Did I pronounce it right? Cool. Yeah. It means a longing for a home we've never been to. Beautiful. We've all felt something like that at some point. What else you say about spirit? Just any point of view. I'm not looking for a right answer.
From a materialistic perspective, emptiness.
Okay. Emptiness, illusion. That's not just a materialist perspective. Many of the great Eastern philosophies believe that consciousness is an illusion. Enlightenment is reached when you realize I don't exist.
Which is the concept of nirvana, isn't it?
In a sense.
Free.
Free meaning like free will versus bound. Okay, yeah.
I mean, spiritually anyway. Like,
or bound, actually. You know?
Yeah.
Depending on what philosophy you're going for.
Yeah, because, like,
some people I think do.
Physically, like, say I don't know, go kill somebody, you know? Like, I can't do that because I'll go to jail. But, like, spiritually, I don't know. But you know what I mean?
Telling you that you're not doing something.
You could kill somebody, there would just be consequences.
Right.
Sorry, but you would be free to do it.
Right.
Yes. Wonderful, wonderful story about that. Should have them read section of that story. The Russian John book. Crime and Punishment. Why am I going? Yeah, probably. That's not the one. I'm thinking of the short story that's like that, though. Basically, a guy goes and kills a perfectly nasty old person, and he has to decide whether he can live with the guilt of it or not. They deserve to die, but can he live with the guilt of killing somebody? Yeah. Anyway, moving on. I'll remember it later. For some reason, my brain's going blank right now.
Propensity to worship whatever. Or propensity to worship.
Ah, okay.
Whether it's a god or whether it's something else.
Yeah. Augustine or Augustine. He called us homo religiosus. Homo sapiens means what? What does sapien mean? Sapien. Sapienza. Huh? Close. Means wisdom. Means wisdom. So we're the love. Homo religious is the one who see or knowledge. Excuse me, not wisdom, knowledge. That's Sophia's wisdom, knowledge. So Homo sapiens is the knowledgeable ape, and essentially, he said we were the religious ape. Human beings worship something. Again, these are ideas you could have about humanity.
I think that kind of goes with the relational too. We have to worship something.
Okay.
Whether it be money or, God or a God. Like, everybody worships something.
Yeah. One of the guys you're going to see, one of the quotes in your paper for this week is a guy named Paul Tillich. He called that thing that we base our life on the ground of being. Okay. There's some foundation we put under our feet. Is it a good one, or is it a bad one? Is it a false one? Is it a true one? How about just there are plenty of there are traditions that believe we are spiritual but don't have a soul. It may sound a little foreign to you, but there's some traditions like that. There's a question. The Greek idea is that our soul is like a ghost inside our body. If you've ever heard the phrase "the ghost in the machine," that's where it comes from. A couple of years ago, the one who plays Black Widow in the Marvel movies did a movie about that. Yeah, Scarlett Johansson. She did a movie about that, though. Something like Ghost in the Machine.
Ghost in the Shell.
Ghost in the Shell. Thank you. There you go. A similar movie was made on the flip side of that, asking whether robots could develop souls, called Deus Machina. So do we have a soul? And if so, what's its relationship to our body? Soul, body, spirit is the classic Christian formulation. Some Christians are what they call bipartite. That means we have souls and bodies. Some are tripartite, saying we have soul, body, and spirit.
What would be the defining difference between soul and spirit?
Spirit comes from God. Actually, has to do with the way the Jewish conception of animals. In Jewish conception of animals, there are animals with souls, and there are animals with souls and spirit. Human beings are the only one in the third category. Why? What's the Genesis story about how are human beings made?
We had breathed into us directly by God.
Right? That's Genesis 2. In the image of God. This is a lively question. Image of God. Before, on one of the other pages we did, one of you guys came up with that we were higher, someone said more, I think maybe the word was advanced, an advanced animal, right? Tons of animal rights activists would 100% disagree with that. And say we have no more right to eat shrimp than we have right to kill people.
I can understand a lot of animals, but shrimp.
They're insects. Come on, they're sea insects.
If you kill a spider, you can eat a shrimp.
If it'll kill me before I kill it, it deserves to be.
I don't think the shrimp is going to kill you.
Exactly. That's why it deserves to be.
Good job on it.
I had one of my classmates in seminary when he got engaged for his wedding present, his wife bought him a smoker. He was from Texas, and he used to wear a shirt around campus that said, "I didn't claw my way to the top of the food chain to eat vegetables."
I like that.
Yeah. So these are all ways we can look at what human beings are. But here's there's two things as we wrap up for today, I want you guys we're going to reflect on. Is that no matter which set of lenses you're using to look at what it means to be a human being, there are two things that are absolutely true one that's absolutely true and one that's true from a Christian perspective. The first one is this. The one that's true from every perspective is that one of your vocabulary words today is finitude. Okay? No matter what lens you look at to examine human beings, maybe with the exception of biological, every one of those categories is finite. What does finite mean? Not eternal. Yeah, finite. To be human is in some way, shape, or form to be finite. Okay? In all those different categories. Maybe depending on your conception of the soul. Maybe that's eternal. Although people disagree about that too. So to be human means to be finite. And as back to our opening exercise where you guys were looking at all those pictures and you were asking questions, you're asking leading questions because you had an idea in mind of what you were zeroing in on. What you were zeroing in on led your evaluations, led your questions, guided you on how to win the game. Okay? The most radical thing I want to put out for you guys today, and we'll look at a passage from Romans next week, is that when we look at what it means to be human being, our model is Jesus, not Adam and Eve. Now, you guys were raised in Christian homes of very different sorts. One of the reasons you came up with so many of the bad things about human beings is that at some level, instinctively, you picked up that there's a model that's higher than just what we see around us. If all I saw was the world around me, I wouldn't think there was anything wrong with it. There's no reason to go, oh, this world stinks. Unless I've got some sense, to your point about it, a feeling that there should be something better than this, right?
How could we know that there's something better if there isn't?
Right. That instinct, that's Zenzu. That's a sense of I have a desire for something I've never seen. I've never seen a better world than this one. So why do I have a sense there should be something better? When Christians say that Jesus lived without sin, what they're really saying is that Jesus was the first human being the way human beings were supposed to be. We were not made for sin, and because of sin, the scripture says, sin brought in death. We weren't made for that. We were made for something very different than we experience. Jesus is the first picture of that. In fact, in the book, what we're going to look at in the book of Romans next week, St. Paul calls him the new Adam. And the word Adam, a little spoiler for next week, Adam is not his name. Adam is simply Jewish for person. Eve's name means something. Eve's name means mother of the living. Adam is person.
Basically, he was a guy.
Yeah, he's person. Yeah, exactly. First human beings. But Jesus is really the first human being as human beings are meant to be. What we would be in God's perfect plan. All right, so for this week, your homework. All those quotes reflect on this, and most of them are by non-Christians or people before they became Christians. Okay? There are 2 poems there. I encourage you to read both of them. Dylan Thomas is one of my favorites. He's Welsh. Yay. And a poem by C.S. Lewis before he became a Christian. Okay? Huh?
In prison, I see.
In prison, yes.
Just
But all of those are reflections on being finite, which means finitude, right? Okay? Finitude is a condition of being finite. Okay? So you don't need to look up that vocabulary word. Then your homework is very easy. I want you to make a list of 10 of your favorite things about yourself. I'm artistic. I'm logical. I'm coordinated. I'm pretty. Whatever it is that you like about yourself. And then 5 of your favorite experiences you've had in your life. Just make a list. 10 favorite things about yourself, 5 of your favorite experiences. And then rank them if you can. That's your homework. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you, Pastor.
You're very welcome, sir.